Hey everyone, this is just a quick snapshot video on perfect competition, both in the short run and the long run. Now, before we get on to explaining the diagram, we're going to have to look at the characteristics of perfect competition. And most of your econ teachers would have gone through this mnemonic called half PPP, which is a really easy one to remember and then recall in exams. So it's really important that you go through these. So you can see it on the left-hand side, I'm highlighting it in yellow there. HALFPPP, and what we do with that mnemonic is we use it in order to remember the following characteristics. H stands for homogeneous. Homogeneous means perfect substitutability. So basically, there are many alternatives to this product. Okay, perfect substitutability. Their products are exactly identical and they're the same. A stands for access to all factors of production, which essentially means that all firms have equal access to factors of production. No one has an advantage over each other, and therefore all firms are on a level playing field when accessing resources. This is important because if one firm had more access or had less access, clearly they would be at an advantage or disadvantage depending on what they had. And therefore that doesn't make that perfect competition. L stands for large number of buyers and sellers, which means that there are many buyers in the market and many sellers, which is quite important for our long run discussion. F is freedom of entry and exit, so there are no or very low barriers to entry and exit. And then you have the three Ps: profit maximization, perfect information, and price taker. All firms in all market structures are profit maximizers. That's an objective that most firms will adopt. There is perfect information. It's not restricted between buyers and sellers. It's open, it's easy to access, and buyers are informed and sellers are informed as well. And finally, price taker. The demand curve is going to be perfectly elastic. Now, the reason we're price takers is because basically we have so much competition and there are so many substitutes that the market dictates the price. As a business, we can't dictate it. We have to accept what the market gives us, and we have to try to operate within that remit in order to make a profit. Therefore, as a business, our diagram is going to be a flat line, which is basically a flat horizontal line, which is basically a perfectly elastic demand curve. So, using these characteristics, it's really important to identify, to apply the characteristics in our diagram. And here it is. The diagram now we're going to focus on initially is a short run diagram. There are two. There's a short run and long run diagram in Perfect Comp, but the short run diagram we're going to show first. As you can see, there's two diagrams. One is a market one and the other one is a business diagram. Okay, the market diagram just shows the demand and supply for the market in total, and the business diagram is for the individual diagram. It's for the individual business. So we start off with our market price and our market quantity, which is P against Q. And we use that now to take over to our business diagram. Now remember, we're price takers, so we have to accept the market price, which we do. This then creates our demand curve, which basically means that we have to accept that price as a business. So our demand curve is going to be perfectly horizontal, perfectly elastic. Our demand curve is equal to the average revenue curve. It is the average revenue curve rather, which is the price times quantity, and it is in this case, because the price is constant, it is also our marginal revenue. Okay, the marginal revenue is the change in total revenue of the change in output, but the change in total revenue is consistent because there's no change in price. The price is the same. So we have D equals AR, which equals MR. We now want to include our cost curves in order to finish the business diagram off. Now the cost curves, as you know, we include are the marginal cost and the average cost, and therefore this can allow us to establish supernormal profit. So there you have AC drawn, okay, the average cost curve. The marginal cost passes the average cost curve at the lowest possible point, so we highlight that and we draw through the marginal cost. So the last step really for this diagram is to now draw something called supernormal profits. The condition for supernormal profits is where the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue. Okay, we've done this a few times now, so just make sure you remember that. Where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, you have this objective called profit maximization. So you've got to find that on the diagram, that point. You highlight it. And there it is on the diagram, MC equals MR. We bring that down to the quantity, and we highlight the quantity as Q. And we also want to ensure that we can find the price and the cost at this point. So how do we do that? Well, look, where MC equals MR, you can see that at that point, you're already on the demand curve, which highlights the price. You now want to highlight the cost, and you can do that by going down to the average cost curve and then taking the equilibrium across and then labeling it as C. And then what you notice is that rectangle box there is basically the supernormal profits being made. And you should highlight this as supernormal profits as well, so the examiner knows. You don't have to shade it in. You can do corners, label the corners as well. It's entirely up to you. So that's a short run diagram for perfect competition, and it shows that in the short run, with the first mover advantage, with a few firms in the market exploiting the prices that they have, they're able to make some supernormal profits. However, this doesn't last for long, and it doesn't last for long because in the long run, the supernormal profits acts as an incentive for other firms to join the market, which they can easily do because there are low or no barriers to entry. So if we now transition into the long run, I'm going to show you the process that you need to be aware of. Clearly, if profits are being made, supernormal profits are being made, other firms will want to join this market and take advantage of that and exploit those profits. If other firms do join, this will shift the supply curve to S2. This creates a new equilibrium at Q1 and P1, which creates a new demand curve, which we have to show in our business diagram. And that new demand curve is at a lower price. Why is it at a lower price? There's more competition. So we take that across and highlight it as P1, okay? And we draw in our new demand curve, which is perfectly elastic again, and label that differently as D1, AR1, and MR1. And you can see here what's going to happen. If we carry out the process of MCMR again, the exact same process to find out how much profits are being made with this new impact on supply, you notice that where we've highlighted the equilibrium, where MC equals MR, we have the price at P1, we take that down to the cost curve, and we take it across and label it as C again because it overlaps the red line, which is fine. And we have a new area of supernormal profits, that green box. You can see it's much smaller, and it's smaller because the new firms that have entered the market have taken away some of that total profit that existed. And this will continue to happen. Every time more and more firms enter because there's an incentive to enter, the supply curve will keep shifting to the right. Okay, so what happens in the long run? Well, look, in the long run, we want to redraw our perfect competition diagram to show that basically there was no more incentive to firms to enter, and that in the long run, there are no supernormal profits being made. And so what I showed you previously was a transition, and that's what you would use to explain in an essay what's happening from the short run to the long run. But in order to draw the long run diagram, just as a complete diagram, you can see the starting point here where I've had the original market price, the original demand supply curve. And so just to finish off, what you would do here is you would essentially draw your new supply curve, shifting all the way to the right, and you can just cut that in wherever you need to, and we'll label that as S1. And this will, as we said previously in the short run diagram through the transition, give you a new market price, okay? And we can highlight that as P1, okay? Or P star, let's highlight it as P star, because this is the final shift, isn't it, in the supply curve, the last shift. And this will give us a new demand curve at P star, which is just there. So we'll call that D star equals AR star equals MR star, okay? Now remember, this is the long run diagram. So in this, we want to show that there's only normal profits being made. And normal profits in economics terminology, okay, what we're looking to do is show the price being at a point where the average cost equals the average revenue, okay? So that's something that we want to make sure we do. And how do you do that in this diagram? Well, quite simply, you just draw in your cost curves. And so let's do that now. And what we want to make sure we're doing is a cost curve just needs to touch, doesn't it? Okay, the price point. So just bring in a cost curve through there, okay, and label it as AC. and then your MC will also pass through that lowest point there, and there you have it. Okay, and what you notice here now is if we go through the same, the same process in terms of profit maximization, because all firms profit maximize, well, that occurs where MC equals MR. So we find that on the diagram, it's right here on that pink dot, the larger pink dot, MC equals MR. Bring that down to Q, of course, to find out the quantity, but also take it up to your cost curve or down to your cost curve and up or down to your demand curve. But you notice though, at this pink point, we are already on the demand curve and we're also already on the average cost curve as well. So therefore, our price, P, or P star in this case, is equal to the cost as well. You also notice at this point, actually, the average cost is equal to the average revenue. And that's exactly what we were trying to get to, because this shows essentially in business terms breaking even. Your cost and revenue are equal, but in economics we refer to it as a normal profit point. Now you see that there is no more incentive for any firms to enter the market, because there's no profits, supernormal profits being made, just normal profits. So this supply curve at S1 does not shift to the right any further. This would be your final drawing for the long run profit perfect competition diagram, and you could do the short run diagram separately and the long run diagram separately. Now, if we go back to this diagram here that I drew just previously, you could draw it all on one diagram, so short run and long run, but you have to work back. So you can see I've done 3 supply curves in order to get lower and lower prices and therefore lower and lower profits. But if you want to just draw the transition, well, you notice here in purple again, where the average cost is the lowest possible point and MC cuts through it, okay, you would have to make your last demand curve go through there, and then you work back to the demand curve there, and that's where your supply curve would shift. So you can call that S1, and that would then negate the need to do the transitions, so you can remove those two, okay? And at that point the same thing happens where AC equals AR. What I would advise is, depending on time, you do what you need to do to ensure that you have shown that the short run and long run diagrams are different, and that essentially in the short run profits are diminished by firms entering the market because there's no barriers to entry and there's a profit incentive. And in the long run, this profit incentive disappears and firms stop entering that market now because there's no incentive to do so, and therefore in the long run normal profits are being made. And in fact, if we just go back to our diagram in the long run, you also notice that there are many efficiencies that are occurring in this market, because your price is equal to your marginal cost. And you can see that here. Let's just change the color of the pen. Where my price is, it's on the marginal cost. So therefore, this is known as allocatively efficient. It's also on the lowest part of the AC curve, and again different color. It's actually on the lowest part of the AC curve, isn't it, the price point? So therefore it's also productively efficient, okay, and it's on the cost curve, so it's also X efficient. We will be discussing efficiencies in more detail in a future video. I hope that's helped you understand perfect competition in the short run and the long run. Any questions, drop them in the comments.